ISO FileMaker Magazine, the professional's resource for FileMaker know-how.
Well, hello there and welcome back to another FileMaker tutorial video where we are going to learn more about FileMaker Pro. My name is Matt Petrowski, bringing you these tutorials from my website, FileMakerMagazine.com. In this tutorial, we're going to be taking a look at converting a theme from light mode to dark mode, and along the way, we'll learn about the graph and some other layout design tips and tricks. Let's head over to my desktop and take a look at what I'm talking about. Alright, so here we go with the file, and this is a classic follow along with me video. The file that we've got here, you are able to access yourself. I'm working in a copy of FileMaker 18. If we go up to the menu and we take a look at the file menu, you are going to have this option right there, Create New. Go ahead and choose that option, and what's going to come up is any one of these that we're seeing right here. I happen to have chosen the tasks right here, and I saved it to my desktop. So if you do the same thing, you'll be able to follow along in this video. There's no extra special stuff in a file that I'm providing for this particular video. All right, so our goal here is to convert this theme from light mode to dark mode. Now, first thing, I'm going to have to turn off a couple of settings, and we're going to have to figure some things out here in order to make this work. We've got the theme, and right off the bat, we don't necessarily know what and or if any grid settings were used, but we can take a look at the fact that this whole solution pretty much is on a 3-column design. So we can see that because quite clearly if I just go like this and I just made 3 of these, 1, 2, and 3, you'd see that we've got our 3 columns. Now, one of the difficulties that we have when we're going to convert or work with dark mode is being able to see the grid. I'll address that, but we need to find out what the grid settings are first. So what we're going to do is we're going to take the width of this layout, which we can get by going to this first tab area right here, the position tab, when we are selected on that, and if nothing is selected in the layout, in other words, if we don't have something selected here, which we can see indicated by the selection right there, if we click outside here in the off-screen area, or below, the number that we're given right there is the width of the layout. So this was designed at 1024. Now that's a width that'll probably work in a landscape mode for an iPad. So this number wasn't happenstance, it was probably selected on purpose. Now that number slowly increases as we get higher and higher resolution on our digital devices, but all we have to do is take that value, which I'm going to use a calculator, and I'm going to go 1024. This, by the way, that I'm using right here is a application called LaunchBar, which has a built-in calculator, just allows me to use a keyboard shortcut to bring up and do some quick calculation. I use it a lot when I'm doing my designs. But if we divide this by 3, you can see that we get a really oddball number, 341.33333. So obviously this is a 1/3 of this split. Now, working with odd versus even numbers is a really interesting choice when it comes to theming, because what we're going to do is, I've already showed this before, but hey, we're here to learn, so I'll show it again. In order to get the spacing that we want to use between objects, we're simply going to use this as our major value for our grid, and then we would divide that in order to get the spacing that we want between objects. So let's go put it into our grid. In fact, I've already put it down there, right there, under the grid area where it says 341. Now you have to remember we are dealing with that 0.333. 0.333 isn't necessarily a good place to break a grid on. It's better if it's closer down to 0 or closer to 9 where the grid will fall. FileMaker has to do some really funky math when we use fractional values for our grid. But of course, if I wanted to, say for instance, split this into 4, if I divide it by 4, I might get an even split. There you go. Because of the common numbers we're used to, binary 2, 4, what is it, 2, 4, 16, 8, I don't know, it goes to 256, 5, 12, and then whatever, it's the doubling every time. So that would work for a 4-column design, but it doesn't work for a 3-column design. So sometimes what I will do is, rather than using the absolute dimension of a device, I will reduce that width so that I can get a closer to better split. Rather than ending up on a 1/3, I can get closer to 0 or closer to 9. Now the fractional values, you don't have to worry about those entirely. FileMaker will take care of them, and it will do its best to draw a grid that will match your requirements. Now what we're going to do is we're now going to take the spacing. The spacing is the distance that we have here between these two objects. What type of spacing do you want to use? And that's something that is usually going to be in between the 8 and I'm going to say 12 point. That's about the only ranges. I've never really used a spacing larger than 12 that I can think of, or lower than 8. Now lately what I will do is I will take, so let's divide that by our 3, I will use 11, and I'll tell you why I use 11. It's because on a rounded corner, if you have a corner that rounds or curves around, the center point of that, it's just like my hand. My hand is an odd number. It is 5, so I have a middle value. That middle value also represents the middle of an arc, so it works really good for when you're going to have corner radiuses on your objects. So if I was, for example, using a corner radius on this object and gave it 5 or 7 or 11, it's going to be odd because the center point will be right straight through the middle on that 45 degree. So let's bring back our calculator up there, and we've got that value. So we're going to take this 341, and we're now going to divide that. So 341, and we're dividing it by the spacing that we want to use between objects. So the spacing would be, let's say, 10 points. If I did it by 10, I get 34.1. Now 0.1 is really close to 34 and it's not that bad, so it would work, but let's see what happens if we go with 11. There's a magic number that I like, an odd number. I'm going to use an 11 by 11 grid. So 31 becomes our second magic number, our minor. And you can see that right here, 341 and 31. So let's turn on our snap to grid and show grid. This is one of the easiest ways to lay out a nice looking design. You can see that the spacing here, that this line, the major, shows right about this point right here. But we have a problem with our grid. The grid in this particular case is non-visible. Now I put in a request personally to the team. I don't know if it would ever get in there, but it would be really nice if we could control the color of the grid. And alas, we cannot. So in this particular design, we can see that if I select the body part and then I go over to my styles and let's say I move it off of the secondary to the default, we're going to get the white version. Now this is what FileMaker probably, when they implemented the grid, they used white as their baseline, and then they made this gray color a light color offset. It would be great, again, if we could control this, but we can't. So what we're going to do is, let's see if they've got a color in here. There's a dark color right there, a very dark, nice color. So now that we've got our grid that we're going to work within, we don't know if it's the same grid that the designer used when this original design was laid out, but we're going to work with it and we're going to adjust the design to that. So if we're going to go to a dark theme here, in most cases we're going to be going with a black. So I have a couple of options. I could just set this directly to a black value by changing the color right here and switching right there, and it becomes a black. Of course, I then have a style that is now modified, and you get to choose. You can leave this as a modified existing style, or you can save this as a new style. I like to always save these as new styles, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to choose to save as a new style, and I'm going to call this simply black. I might want to change this. Actually, I'll rename this to dark. And then I will save this. Now here's an interesting thing. This is a base theme that was created and is categorized according to FileMaker. Now the star means that it's modified, and if I choose this to save changes to theme, what it will do is it will save not to the base theme that came with FileMaker. It will simply create an exact copy of it, and it'll name it the same thing. Unfortunately, it doesn't add the word copy like we get in the rest of the areas of FileMaker. So if I choose that right there, FileMaker has saved a copy of this and just kept the name the same. I, of course, can just choose to rename this to whatever I want. Where'd my dialog go? FileMaker tends to jump that dialog for styles all over the place. I'll just call this my theme now. So once you name your style something new, then that's what you're going to get. So here is our issue. With this grid, and I'm going to select the top navigation, and I'm also going to select my new dark color, which will be dark as well. What I want to do is I want to choose some dark colors to use, And the cool thing is a lot of this has been done for me. I do not have to do this myself. Let's take a look at where we can find some dark theme colors. All right, so here we are in a web browser. Now, here is the cool thing about converting a theme from a light mode to a dark mode. You don't even have to necessarily be a theme designer yourself because designs and color combinations have already been chosen for you. In fact, if we take a look at this URL, which is at vscodethemes.com, these are simply just themes that are made for a text editor. But they have taken the time to select colors that work pretty well with each other. And in fact, you get to choose whatever you want in terms of colors. So as I click on dark right here, and it's going to give me a long list of dark colors, I get to choose, do I want a variation of a purple, or do I want to go with one that has more of my gray colors? Ultimately, what we have on screen are things that you can choose with regards to the colors that you're going to use. Now, I would suggest you not choose something that is super strong contrast, such as that right there where we've got the yellow. You're basically looking for, we can see right here, we've got a little bit more brown tones in them, versus here we've got blue tones, and here we've got some slate gray tones. Whatever it is that you're going to choose, there are tools that are available in order to get these colors. First off, you can get the colors directly from the CSS here in the browser. Provided you've gone into, let's say, the settings, the preferences, this develop menu right here turns on a feature within Safari, and it's by default available in Chrome, whereupon I can, on this object, simply click and choose Inspect Element. Once I inspect the element, then what will happen is a new window, the debugger window, will come up. And as I hover over items here for the browser, it will show me what these objects are. So here, this SVG, or this whole class right there, I can, using this inspector, show the little sidebar area right here, look at my styles. So it was by default selected on changes. I go to styles right here, and I can select on objects. Let's see if I can get to the color somewhere here. Doesn't look, this is a little bit of a hunt and peck. It's not my most favorite for doing this. Let's see if this div right here has a color. We're looking for a color that has RGB values or hexadecimal. There you can see right there, that is giving me not the RGB that I want. I don't know what I've selected on here, but the whole point is this would be the color that I would be able to take directly out of the CSS. Now again, this is not necessarily my preferred method because I can go and grab the colors with an easier tool that is built into the operating system or something that you can download for Windows. So I am going to bring up the built-in tool for the Macintosh, which is called Digital Color Meter. You can see that it's opened up right here. And what happens is as I move the mouse, you can see that quite clearly it is showing me the values that I want to use. Now, what's really nice is I can copy these values and use them directly within FileMaker. In fact, anything on screen I can choose to use. Now, one thing you need to be aware of is you can see that there's a couple of different options that we have from the menu bar here. Display native values, and then we've got P3, sRGB, generic, lab, and Adobe. The values that are returned may differ in terms of what you're seeing depending on the application and how it renders. If you know about these things and you're familiar working with these color spaces, as they're called, in different programs, Photoshop, what have you, my suggestion, just leave it on display native values and you'll get the values that you want. So with this particular tool, and if you're on Windows, you'll have to become familiar with the tool that you're using. Let's take a look at a few of the menu options. We go up here to color, and we have copy color as text. We also have view, and we have the display values. So lock position, Command L will allow you to lock the display of the colors so that you can switch over to FileMaker and use the color. Or most importantly, you can just copy the color as text. Now, when you do copy the color, the easiest values to use are hexadecimal. So we will go to our display values, and you can see that I am displaying as hexadecimal. Internally, FileMaker tends to use, I believe, percentage. Well, it may use both decimal or percentage. If we switch to those, you can see right here what we get. There's the RGB values, which you can enter into the color picker when you use that within FileMaker. So if I wanted this is 16, this is 33, 150, 243. This is a little bit more difficult to use because you have to copy and input each of the 4 different values. But with the digital color meter forward, right now, if I use that Command L, it's that option that we saw right here up at the view, lock position. So I can have this, I can lock this now, and now whenever I move the mouse, it stays locked, and I can reference this within FileMaker. I just simply copy the values into the RGB. But the easiest way, and I'll unlock that, is to simply just use the copy as text, and when you do, simply set the display value to our hexadecimal, because that's what FileMaker allows us to get right into the solution. So now that I've shown you how to find the colors that you want to use, I've also shown you how to click or select the colors that you want. Let me pick one. I'm going to go with this blue right here. So I've got my hexadecimal values right there. With the color meter forward, I am going to choose this option. You can see that when I move the mouse, the color changes. So I have to remember the keyboard shortcut right there, Command-Shift-C. So while I'm over it, I go Command-Shift-C. I've now copied that, and I'm going to go over to FileMaker. I'm going to select my background, which is currently set to dark. I'm going to go over to my value right here. I'm going to choose this. I'm going to double click right here, and I'm just going to paste. And there's my value. Now, it may be taking the little hash mark that's many times in front of that, but FileMaker fortunately ignores it, and I've got my color. Now, key thing is, in order to remember the color, in order to set the color, I have to click right here. Notice that this is staying black. It's probably difficult to see on the video, but this is staying black. It is not blue yet. Just because I've pasted here does not mean the color is set. I have to click, and now the color has been set, and you should be able to see a variation, hopefully on the video, between the header that we have here and this value right here. Of course, as soon as I save the changes to the style, it will change both of them right there, and I can save my changes to my theme. So now I need to get a few other colors into my palette. So I'm going to go back over here. I'll switch to my digital color meter, make sure that's forward. This is the lighter variation. I'm going to copy that. I'm going to go over here, and I am going to simply choose to make a square just for the purpose of capturing this color, because I don't want to set my color. With that copied to the clipboard, I pasted it. I'm going to go ahead and take this value. Got a little spinning wheel there, probably because of the video while it's recording. I will take the value and drag it into the color palette. So let's go in. I will paste here and just drag this into the palette. Don't know if you saw that, but I drag that right there, and I've now saved the color. If I want to see how the object is going to look, I can simply now select the object and just apply the color and see that the contrasting colors are going to be there. So I'll zoom in, and we'll go into browse mode, and we can see that we've got the 2 colors that we took from the style over at VS Code Themes. So it is now time to apply this to objects. Now, I'm not going to show you how to do that because you probably already know that I can simply just say, for example, select this header area or this right here and just choose this to be this color. Now, it is up to me to whether or not I want to save the changes to the current style of named inverted, or if I want to create a new style. Completely up to you. For right now, I'm just going to leave that custom styled, because I know that you know how to apply these 2 objects and then save the styles. I've already shown you how to do that, and you probably already knew how to do it before. What I am going to show you is the next useful trick when working in dark mode that deals with the grid. Now, as I stated at the beginning of this video, the problem that we have with the grid is that we do not get to control the color. And so clearly, FileMaker is making a decision here to show this really garish, hyper strong contrast, which is actually distracting me from my grid in terms of being able to use it. So there's only 2 options that we have right now. I can switch over to my position tab, which I've done right now, scroll to the bottom. I can turn the grid on and off, but my preference is not to work like that. I would like to be able to see the grid, but I need it to be a little bit more light. So here again is one of the reasons that you subscribe to ISO FileMaker magazine. You pick up little tips like this. I am going to take a box right here and I'm going to drag that box out. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to send this box to the very back of all other objects. Here with the object inspector selected between fields and objects, we can see that the rectangle is all the way up at the top of the whole of the stacking order right here. If I want to go to the arrange menu and I want to say send to back, what we're going to see is that's going to jump all the way to the bottom of the list. Hopefully my head's not blocking that there. But the rectangle is now at the bottom. It is the lowest object in the layout order. So what we are going to do is we are going to go over to our appearance. We are going to select black as our color, and then we are going to choose this option of other color, where we are going to now set an opacity level. Watch what happens magically on the grid when I drop this down. I get to control the color of the grid lines by simply applying a black box with an opacity setting so that the grid is not so garishly distracting while I'm working on my design. Of course, this box is going to go away when I'm finally finished with my design, or I will show you yet another trick that will make this super easy so that you can leave it there if you want to. So I'm going to set this, I'm going to say I want to see the grid lines right there. So let's put it at 81%. All right, with my box, I'm simply going to drag this. I could put this over the whole of the layout and drag this all the way out. In fact, I don't even need to drag. I can go to the Position tab and hit this for 1024 because I know that is the absolute width of my layout. I could just select both of these parts, do the math, and add them together, but it's going to be easier in this case for the vertical just to drag it down. So with that object now in the background, what happens is it would not work in FileMaker because I'm crossing the boundary of the top navigation and the bottom navigation if I was going to show this object. But it turns out that I'm not going to be showing this object, so I'm going to do two things to it. Number one, I'm going to go to the Arrange menu and I am going to lock the object because I do not want to make a selection of it when I'm working. It is just here for the purpose of fading my grid. And number two, in the off chance that I accidentally leave it there, or when I'm moving between browse mode and layout mode, I want to see what the difference is. I am going to go to the fourth tab. What is this one called? I forget. Let's hover until we get the tooltip. And is the tooltip not going to, I believe it's data. There we go. I am going to use the hide object when, this calculation right here, and I'm just going to say true. Now I like to use true. If you like to use 1, you can use the Boolean value of 1, but true tells me that there's no math going on, and it can't be applied when it's locked, so I should unlock that first. Here's a second way to lock and unlock is use the right-click menu. We'll unlock that. We'll now true that in terms of hiding it. It is now going to hide, and we will now go back and we will now lock it. And there we go. When we go into browse mode, we're not going to see that black overlay. We're seeing our true colors as we convert this theme to our dark mode. And all we have to do, let's hide our digital color meter, is really, let's take a look and we'll hide everything else and just take a look at this. All I need to do now is simply change my styles. If I want this particular theme as is, to simply just change the styles, my suggestion would be you simply select the style. You're going to change it to whatever you want. If this is going to be a color, then you would just simply save the styles themselves or create the new variations. But here for the assignee, if I want a variation of that, I'm going to go in here and let me show you how I pick colors. That's also useful in terms of getting a color that's going to complement a dark theme. That is in case you don't have a color available in the theme that you've chosen over, say, on VS Code themes or whatever theme site. Just do a Google search, you'll find all kinds of themes. One of the things that I do is I start with the color that the object is on, and then I vary the saturation based on that. It's one of the easiest ways to do things from a designing standpoint. So with my text here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to use FileMaker's little magnifying glass. There's two ways to actually select colors. I can use the magnifying glass that FileMaker provides, or I can use the operating system's little eyedropper right here. Either one will work, but of course in FileMaker, we're just going to be able to use that selection right there. Select the color, and it looks like it didn't select the color. Don't know why, but we know that the color is right here. We'll use that color. So we have a pure blend with the text exactly matching the same color as the background in this particular case. So what we do is we now go into our other color, and we are going to use, instead of what may be set, which is RGB, which is very difficult for us to work with as humans with these values. How do I know what it is between 0 and 255? I don't. Let's use something I can visually control, which is an HSB, or our hue, saturation, and brightness. Well, this is where we can control just the brightness value. We can bring that up. Look at that. So slightly right there. I can get a very faded, blend into the background look, or I can get a very stark, I want you to stand out look. Now, my suggestion for labels is you simply just fade this into the background just enough so that we can see, because once we become familiar with the user interface and how it works, we're not referencing the labels as much as we are the data. The labels are just there for the initial learning stage of what is this that I'm looking at. And with dark themes, you don't want to get too faded out right there. I don't even know if the video might be showing that, but I'll go right there at 50%. So with that now set, I would be able to simply just go, and I'm going to save the changes to the current style, and then just save the theme. And then there you see. Let's see if this did have a style knockout. Let's go ahead and save the changes to the current one on that. Boom, instant, all over the board. Now, the last thing that I'll talk about with regards to a dark versus a light theme is you can see that all of these objects are styled with a solid fill. You can always use a transparency in order to see through an object in order to see the background. Now, I believe one of the primary reasons that FileMaker has a fill on this single edit box, as I go here and I simply select this and make it transparent, and then save the changes to the default and save the changes there. I'll have to do it on the calendar field as well. We'll set that to none and save those changes. And then we will select here and select it to none or transparent as well. Save that and save those changes. I would have to change the borders, but you get the idea here. With this, I am able to see through the background, but the number one reason that FileMaker does this is because when you have multiple lines of text, what happens is you're able to see over other fields. Let's go into browse mode here, or layout mode, excuse me. Let's put in a due date right here, and you'll see what I'm talking about. Is there there's a date right there. It may be super far away in terms of what's going on. The anchoring is, I would have to look at the design to see what's going on. But if I continued to type things over here, you would see, there we go. There's what happens right there. Without a fill on a field, what happens is we get this look where it's transparent. You can see through that as you type multiple lines into a field. But my question is, who's doing that in a single line entry field? Most of the time, I'm actually setting it so that you can't even put a return into the field. But in this particular case, we can see because of the anchoring that FileMaker is using here. If I take a look at my anchors, there we go. We can see that this particular field is anchored onto the bottom. So what's happening is they are supporting multiple lines in this particular task field. So it is what's expanding. Everything else is locked to the bottom and shifting down. We can see that clearly when we go into the browse mode, and we can see the design. But I think what I've given you here is a good collection of tips and tricks showing you how to find dark mode colors, how to apply them, how to determine what the grid is, how to set the grid. I've got a lot of tips and tricks about design. I've been doing a lot of design lately, in fact. And I have a course that I'm working on that will be the Ultimate FileMaker Design course. If you're interested in this type of video and learning about creating really excellent looking designs in FileMaker, then I would suggest going over to FileMakerMagazine.com You can sign up there. You can create an account. There is on the website a link for training. Go ahead and click on that and then add your information, and that will let me know that I'm going to notify you of the upcoming course that I'm working on about much more than what I've covered just here in this short video. But as always, I'd like to wish you much luck with your FileMaker development, and until next time, happy FileMaking. We hope you've enjoyed this video tutorial, and we'd like to say thank you for your subscription and your support. If you're not already a subscriber, head on over to www.filemakermagazine.com/subscribe for more information about the benefits of joining.